Hi, this is Katie Burns and you're watching Live Well. Today I'm at my house and I invited the camera crew, Ethan Lloyd, out here to film today because I thought it'd be nice to come back where it all started, right here in my garden, episode 1, season 1, and we talked about unhealthy and healthy habits. If you guys want to rewatch that episode, you can watch mine and a lot of others of the ValleyTV Channel 18 episodes on YouTube. But what I wanted to talk with you about today, and why I've brought you out, is living your imperfect life. And I thought that showing you my garden now, well, it's really not a garden, but if you look back at the season 1, episode 1, you'll see that it was stunning. I mean, it was perfect. I had Swiss chard, kale, lettuce. I mean, the whole thing was planted. I had straw covering it. It was beautiful. I don't know if we filmed later in the season. I'm not really sure the timeline. I know that it felt about like this, where we had a little bit of greenery. But I think that we all go through different seasons, and with that, it can be reflected in the garden. I mentioned a couple of times in season 2 that I couldn't do a garden, and I was very disappointed because I've had a garden probably for 15 years, every year. Just always been an avid gardener. My grandfather was a gardener, my mother was a gardener, and she still gardens. But last year, the season, I just couldn't do it. And so I took a bag of wildflower seeds, zinnia seeds, sunflower seeds, and my child and I sprinkled them carelessly in this garden bed. I think I might have smashed some down in order to make an effort that they actually made it into the dirt, but it was really not a very fine effort, but it was a fun effort, and I knew that if I couldn't water it or if it didn't grow, it really wouldn't matter, because whatever would be would be. It would just be that. It would either be beautiful flowers or it wouldn't be anything, but that was the season that I was in. So with all that said, this year I'm going to plant some things, but it's not going to be perfect. Here's why. I have a toddler, and she likes to get into this garden bed, and I believe that she thinks that it's hers. And it has been when we were weeding, and she could get in here and get muddy and tear up anything that she wanted because we were pulling out everything. And I realized she's gonna think that she can do the same thing once I plant these nice little plants in here. And so it's gonna be a nice training moment that, oh, not this, this. You can dig here, but not here. You can pull up this herb, but not that. And then I started to think, I don't want to make the garden a battle. I don't make everything a battle. So I decided to buy some plants, some that were hardy, that could be picked on and would still survive. Some plants that looked like they were on their last leg. I'll take this over here so you can see it. This is heirloom kale. It's a bit discounted. You can see why. It has spent too long in this container, and it needs to go into the dirt. Don't usually buy plants that look like this, but you know what? We're living imperfectly. We're embracing the imperfection, and we're gonna say, hey, I'm gonna put this in the ground. If my child comes over and picks it, it'll be okay. I didn't spend that much money on it. And bonus, she's in here engaging with the garden. It could be a learning experience where I can say, hey, put that in your mouth. Maybe I could get her to eat kale. Y'all think it's possible? I don't really either. But I'm going to do it anyway to give it a chance, because if you don't put something in the ground, you have nothing. Just like what I was saying in season 1. If you don't put something in, take something out, you're really not using your time. You're really not using your garden bed. You're really not embracing your season. But I don't want anybody to get the impression that we're all just living perfectly and everything works out and I don't want you to think Katie's garden bed is always perfect, because it's just not. It's just not how life goes. And so I've had to really learn, if I was gonna counsel, if I was gonna give advice, if I was gonna talk to people, then I also have to live that way and be accepting of my season, because I'm not gonna be a hypocrite. I'm not into doing any of that. But look at this, talking about imperfection, or things that you think shouldn't be maybe. These are chives flowers. Should you call that reseeding? Yes. Aren't they pretty? I picked these last week and I set them right here for my child to play with, because she loves to pick flowers and then crush them with her tiny little hands. She didn't touch those, and they're still pretty. They could have gone in a vase, but go figure. But that's what I mean, is thinking outside of the box, thinking, you know, what can I do? What can I do with what I have? I'm going to take a break here, and I'm going to get into the garden, and we're going to start planning and keep talking about living your imperfect life. Okay guys, I'm back. I'm in my garden bed. I have right here sage, nice and hardy herb, rosemary, this thing might come back, and then lavender. All this stuff is going to have really great fragrant smells, good to use in cooking, and good for your kid to play with. So what I want to be sure and talk with you about while I'm planning, because I'm multitasking today, in order to get this done, because aren't we all living a busy schedule? So sometimes you just gotta use the minutes that you have. Often I get asked, because I do a lot of things, but I do a little of a lot, and when I'm listing it all out, people say, how do you get all that done? And I'm so concerned that they're gonna think, you know, that I just do a lot of things, and it's really not true. And I certainly don't want to ever make anybody feel like they're not doing enough because they ask me what all I'm doing. So I always say, it's just in the minutes. It's just in my tiny little minutes that I have to spare in life to get things done. But how I learned that was failure. And failure is a really important thing to learn. If you don't know how to fail, I'm afraid that you will worry about doing things, or doing things that scare you. And unfortunately, or I guess you could say fortunately, at a very young age, I learned quite a bit about failure. You may have, if you've watched my other episodes, I've mentioned occasionally that I did not do very well in primary school. I had a learning disability, and the teachers in my early education were not accommodating, and they were not kind to me. I was told quite a bit that I was stupid, and that just wasn't true. Unfortunately, people focus on what you can't do instead of what you can do. And, you know, I was a victim of that. Now, obviously, I have a master's degree, so I'm capable of learning. I was able to go to college, even though if I hadn't switched schools, I'm not sure I would have gone to college. It was that bad. I mean, I was really not doing well. So failure for me at a young age was there, and it was a struggle. I excelled outside in dance and piano and horses. I really excelled there. So I was glad that I had that in order to not be a complete failure in everything, because that's important too. You need some success somewhere. You just got to find where that space is going to be. So there was quite a bit of failure, and well, while I would say that I'm okay with failure, No, not okay with it. But do I know how to keep going when it happens? Yes. And that's the key. But if you're living your imperfect life, failure is going to happen, and you've got to be okay to keep going when you fail. And trying new things. It doesn't really scare me to get out there and make a flub, because failure happens, but yet things keep turning, and you keep growing, and you keep learning, and it ends up being okay. So just like planting these imperfect plants in my not very well tilled garden, I think it's all going to be okay. So just throw that out to the side, because my kid will find it later and she'll think that's a treasure. Living your imperfect life. But that's part of it. So let's analyze your life and think about, for a moment, what am I struggling to do that is something in my life that I have not accepted, that I'm trying to make work, I'm trying to make things be a certain way, but I can't, or it's just a consistent struggle. And it keeps pestering you and keeps bothering you. It could be anything from that laundry basket. I don't know if you guys are following on social media, on Instagram or Facebook, but I went to the Hunter's Art Museum in Chattanooga. If you haven't been, go. Very nice. Toddler friendly. And there was this digital media art display, I guess you could say. Was watching in all corners, or in all tiny squares, this woman fold laundry. And when you put it together, the artist felt like it was art. And it was just a repetition of this woman folding laundry. And I thought, well, look at there. How many times do we complain about laundry? I don't really complain about laundry. Laundry to me doesn't matter. It doesn't, maybe it's because I only have 3 in my household, and my husband does his quite a bit of the time. So maybe that's why I don't have a lot to complain about with laundry. But some people have mounds and mounds of laundry. And I just don't have that. So laundry to me isn't a big deal, but if you do, and that's something that's really driving you nuts, when I say live your imperfect life, I don't mean become at peace with the mountains of laundry. I mean, okay, figure out what you can do with this laundry pile. Whether it's do a little bit every day, whether it's delegate, I don't know, but if it's bothering you, fix it. For me, physical clutter is mental clutter. So when I have a lot of stuff around, it is secretly bothering me, and I don't know what it is. But I can just feel restless, or I'll say broad statements like, everything's a mess, or it's such a disaster, when really I've just got too much clutter, and I need to go through my house with a garbage bag and throw some things out, or reassign its location. One day I got a wild hair, and there's just all these toys that were valuable toys, good toys that were still in use, but my house isn't that big. We don't have this playroom, or there just isn't enough room. And I thought, these toys are still valuable, but I'm running out of space. So I went to my shack that's behind my house, where I kept a bunch of garden tools, and I cleaned it out. I moved some to the other side, and then I put toys out there, and I said, haha, playhouse. And now I can just, say, well, we're going to go play in the playhouse, and it's not perfect. It's not clean. It's kind of rotting a little bit, but it's safe. And she can go out there and spill paint, take chalk, draw on the walls, and it can be a place of freedom for her. I learned that as a play therapist, where we put a child in a room with toys. Now they're special toys, it's kind of designated for a purpose. And we say, you can play almost any way that you want to play. Can you imagine the freedom that that runs through these kids' minds? Because through play they can self-heal. And unfortunately we lose that ability as adults because we don't take the time to imagine, sit, be still, just get curious with things. But they can go in there and they can really work out a lot of what's going on in their life just by having freedom. And I remember so many of my classmates really struggled when the kids would mix the Play-Doh. And I must just be an odd bird because I didn't know that that was wrong. Now maybe it's because I'm not a perfectionist, I'm not really sure. But it didn't bother me, and it still doesn't bother me because it's like, well, if you got one big lump of Play-Doh, whatever, you mix the colors, that's the way it is. And the freedom of that, or the freedom to do that, or the freedom to paint outside of the lines, the freedom just to have a blank canvas and a bunch of paint and say, here you go, and let them be wild and not worry about drip, splatter, or whatever, is therapeutic. It's therapeutic for them, it's therapeutic for us. And it's teaching them that in some places, in some spaces, let's embrace the imperfection. Let's mix the Play-Doh. Let's paint without rules. Let's plant a garden with imperfect plants. And if you get in here and dig it up, I'm not going to cry or be mad at you. I'm going to say, uh-oh, let's replant. Which is what I really want people to say to me in life is, if you make a mistake and you're like, oh, really didn't know about that, I want someone to say, uh-oh, let's replant. And so that's part of embracing your imperfect life. I'm going to relocate and plant some more. Stay tuned. Okay, so next I'm going to plant some kale. But first, when you're trying to move into accepting your imperfect life, to have the plants be messed up and to get to the point where you can say, okay, no problem, replant, or something happens and you say, okay, no problem, redo, you might need some bubbles. And I'm being completely serious with you on this. It's something that we used in school with young children, because if they got upset or if they had test anxiety, the simple act of blowing bubbles helps them to breathe. And how many times have you heard or seen someone say, just breathe? Well, there you go. Adults, children, bubbles are in stock right now in a store near you. Pick up some bubbles, and no matter your age, just have them around, because things sometimes get heated and you can't think about anything. You probably grab your phone and you're saying, oh my gosh, I'm just so stressed out. Let me get on this phone here. I just need a minute. And I'm looking at this phone. And I'm going, oh, I'm so mad. Maybe angry face on that. Be like, what? And you're not taking a moment to breathe. You're just attempting to deny what is there. I'd rather you breathe and think for a moment, what can I do? What can I do to get around this situation? Because we're looking with this garden, with this season, with embracing imperfection, we're looking for genuine growth. And that's not going to be able to happen if you are so consumed with perfection, or if the way things should be. And gosh, I don't want to harp too much on social media, because obviously that's part of my business and I use it quite a bit. But you do have to take it with a grain of salt, and you do have to understand everybody's house doesn't look like day one on an episode of Fixer Upper. Everybody's house doesn't look 100% of the time like the photos that you see on social media. I don't even think that we all need to use white or gray in our homes, which is kind of in style right now, a very clean look. I think that you need to use whatever color brings you joy, even if it's imperfect. Even if you paint the wall and you thought it was going to bring you joy and you realize it just brought you anxiety because red is an anxious color. I don't know. The point is that I think so much of what we're doing is being crafted by what we're surrounded with. And I just want to encourage you to be who God created you to be. Even if that's somebody that loves a red wall, or somebody that hates gardening, or somebody that can't stand mixing the Play-Doh colors. All that's okay. Just trying to find a way to accept the things that you can accept and not let it worry you. I made a post last night. It was late and I couldn't think of what to say. So I'm looking through and I'd forgotten that I'd seen this black shiny rock, had sparkles on it. I'm sure that someone could tell me exactly what kind of rock that is, but it was very different than all the gray rock in the creek. And I was like, a black rock in a sea of gray, or how do you be your own rock in a sea of gray? And how do you stand out in a sea of the same? Have we lost the value to appreciate standing out in a sea of the same? I think about our children and in schools and how everybody, wants them to be a certain way and perform in a certain way. And, doctors and therapists are saying, meet these milestones, do this now. You're behind because you can't do this. That was my dog, if you heard that. And we're all different, and we were all created to be different and develop at our own pace. I was a late bloomer. I got a master's degree late, and I got married late, and I had a kid late, according to societal standards. But that was just me, and that's what worked best for me, and that was my path. And so feeling like it should be some way, or that your child should be doing something at some level, gosh, that's a lot of pressure. I guess it's nice to know, but I'm a bit of a rule breaker. And I think that we all are gonna get where we need to go when we need to be there. Okay, so that's my speech on that and on being different. I need to get back to planting. Okay guys, last but not least, squash. For you gardeners out there, what do you know about squash? It grows and it spreads. You know what else? It gets squash bugs. But you know what else? It's very hardy and it can make a great game of hide and go seek. So when you're thinking about your imperfect life, letting your kid in your garden, think outside of the box. Think, okay, so my child's gonna get in here, and what's gonna make a great game of hide and go seek? Find that squash. And I'm sure some leaves are gonna be torn, and bugs are gonna chew on it, but it's gonna be okay because it's an experience. And that's what I hope that you'll take home today for yourself and for your family is dinner time might look imperfect. You might burn the bread. Somebody, might burp at the table, but if you're all sitting down there together, that's what matters. If you want to plant your garden, plant it. If you want to just do some pots to play with and use it as education, do it. There's really so many different possibilities, and I hope that you will think about ways that you can embrace your imperfections and hopefully that'll take a little stress off your day. So thank you for joining me here at my home, and this week I hope that you'll take time to live well.